Never before have the skeletal remains of any animal created such excitement and controversy as when the Ethiopian remains of Lucy were moved to a museum in Houston, Texas for public display. Hello, my name is Eric Garloff. Lucy's appearance in Houston was scheduled to last from August 31, 2007 to April 20, 2008. Although Lucy's skeleton is missing approximately 60% of its bones, the 40% which remains is expected to draw large numbers of viewers. The artifacts are scheduled to return to Ethiopia in 2013. Her 6-year tour outside of Ethiopia is not only calculated to raise money, but it's also calculated to tell her story. But is the story being told by the exhibition the true story? And by what means or measuring stick do you use to determine if the story is true or false? Do you blindly believe the evolutionary story simply because it's printed in school textbooks? Do you merely accept it as a fact because that's what you've been taught? Or do you hold to the position that since it's done in the name of science, that it must be true? Do you think the proponents of evolution have ever tried to make the evidence lean in favor of evolution by other than honest means? What you're about to see are the chapters of Lucy's story that won't be on exhibit. And once you do, you'll have the real answers to many of these questions. You'll also have the knowledge and understanding to use your God-given wisdom in knowing who Lucy really is. But first, let's take a moment to discuss what knowledge, wisdom, and understanding are, how they differ from each other, and how they can be applied to the information which the evolutionary theory is built upon. First, let's define the term knowledge. Knowledge could be defined as the mere accumulation of unrelated and unorganized facts, without the ability to apply these facts to practical life. Understanding, on the other hand, indicates the ability to evaluate and organize facts, which in turn provides the foundation for wisdom. Once the knowledge base of facts is established, and the understanding of those facts takes place by properly studying and examining the facts, then wisdom comes into the picture as the ability to make honest and practical use of those facts, which is what we're going to do in this program. In the Bible's book of James, chapter 1 and verse 5, we find this statement which says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God who gives generously to all, without finding fault, and it will be given to him." So you see, friends, if you have knowledge and understanding, all you need to do for wisdom is to ask God for it. So I'm asking you to keep an open mind as we begin examining the bones that have been unearthed and used to support the evolutionary theory. Examine these facts you're about to see. Seek an understanding of the truth they hold, and ask God to give you wisdom in forming your conclusion. Let's take a brief look at what science has learned regarding the fossil remains of 6 discoveries, which all held high hopes for being the so-called missing link in man's evolution. As we begin, I'd like to make this statement. If the evolution of humans from an ape-like ancestor is true, there should be 2 proof evidences, or 2 things which prove this theory. The first is the fossil record. The second is a mechanism for change, or in other words, tangible evidence that would suggest that it's possible to evolve from one type of species into another. We're going to begin by examining the fossil records of 6 discoveries from 1856 to 1974. Each of these fossils were used to support the theory of evolution. Once we have looked at these fossil records, we will then look at the mechanism for change. The 6 discoveries we're going to look at are, first, Neanderthal Man; second, Java Man; third, Piltdown Man; fourth, Nebraska Man; fifth, Ramapitcus; and finally 6th, which is Lucy. Much hope was placed on each of these discoveries as the missing link in the line of human evolution. But since each of these discoveries were made and proclaimed to the world, they have all been discredited and proven not to be the missing link. Since the first 5 are pretty much common knowledge, we'll only briefly mention them. However, since Lucy is still being heavily promoted as the missing link, we will spend a little more time examining her. Beginning with Neanderthal Man. Here is the original artist sketch or drawing made of Neanderthal Man. Please notice the unique blend of human feet, upright body, hairy ape-like appearance, and ape-like face. Neanderthal Man was first found near Dusseldorf, Germany in 1856. He was drawn to look ape-like, but this rendering was wrong. Scientists have found that Neanderthal man used jewelry, played musical instruments, made paintings, was capable of speech, and buried their dead. Most anthropologists recognize burial as a very human and very religious act. But the strongest evidence that Neanderthals were fully human and of our species is that at 4 sites, Neanderthals and modern humans were buried together. These findings all point to the Neanderthals as being fully human. Also, the analysis of Neanderthal DNA failed to demonstrate any significant difference in DNA from modern humans. So, what conclusions can we come to about the Neanderthal man? We can conclude they were an isolated population of people living in a cold, harsh climate. They were artisans in that they used jewelry, played musical instruments, and made paintings. Their skeletons show that they had a protruding brow ridge, a stocky build, and short extremities. They buried their dead, and most importantly, they were 100% human. Now let's look at the facts concerning the bones of Java Man. In 1891, Eugene Dubois found an ape-like skull cap and a human-like thigh bone 45 feet apart in East Java, Indonesia. The claim was that these bones were 500,000 years old. Rudolf Virchow, who is regarded as the father of modern pathology, stated at the time of the discovery concerning the skull cap, he said, "In my opinion, this creature was an animal, a giant gibbon, in fact." Then he says, "The thigh bone has not the slightest connection with the skull." Human fossils were also found in Java, dating about the same age as the Java Man bones. Since 1950, anthropologists and textbooks have been calling Java Man Homo erectus, which is upright man, instead of its original name, Pithecanthropus, which means ape man. The conclusion about Java Man is that human and ape-like fossils were found together and used to promote an intermediate transition. The thigh bone and the skull cap do not belong to the same creature. Now we turn our attention to Piltdown Man. The facts about the bones of Piltdown Man contain an interesting story. Piltdown Man's story is similar to Java Man in that bones from 2 different sources were used to promote this find. However, Piltdown Man was taken a step farther. Piltdown Man was an intentional deception. That's right. The bone fragments from 2 sources were fabricated or modified to fit into one skull and intentionally promoted as the missing link. These bone fragments were found between 1908 and 1912 in Piltdown, England. One fragment was that of a human skull, while the other was that of an ape-like jawbone. The claim was made that these bones were a 500,000-year-old missing link in the evolution of man. The New York Times ran an article titled "Darwin Theory Proved True." Piltdown Man was featured in textbooks and encyclopedias. Then, in 1953, approximately 4 decades after the discovery of these bone fragments, scientists studied the bones and uncovered Piltdown Man for the hoax that he was. They dated the bones to be only 600 years old. The conclusion of Piltdown Man is that men deliberately combined the bones from different creatures in a deliberate hoax to fool the scientific community and mislead the world. Now we'll consider the facts about the bones of Nebraska Man. This one is going to be very quick because all that was found in Nebraska Man was a tooth. The fossil evidence for this tooth was discovered in 1922. It was used to support evolution in the 1925 Scopes trial. The claim was made that this tooth was a 1-million-year-old intermediate link. The truth turned out to be quite different, however. The tooth was not the tooth of a man or of an ape, but rather the tooth belonged to a pig. That's right, it belonged to a pig. But until it was uncovered, it was used to support evolution. Are you beginning to see a pattern here? Are you beginning to see what's happening? Fossils are discovered, then great claims are made to support evolution. Papers are written, pictures are taken, artists' sketches are drawn, books are published, and everyone is told that evolution is true. Then, after a passage of time, when the evidence is fully examined, it's discovered that the great claims had no merit whatsoever. Yet evolutionists still cling to their theory, which today they say is a fact. But they still have no legitimate evidence to prove or support their claims. Anyway, let's move on to our next set of facts about the bones of Ramapitcus. The lower jaw of what we know today as Ramapitcus was found in 1930. Yet from this jaw, artistic license was exercised, and you can see here what they drew from only a jaw. You will notice that this ape-like creature is drawn as a biped, or an upright walker, slightly hunched over, as if he was half man and half ape. Time magazine reported in its November 7, 1977 issue the following: Ramapithecus is ideally structured to be an ancestor of hominids. If he isn't, we don't have anything else that is. Hominid means belonging to the family of humans. In other words, in 1977, Time magazine was saying that if Ramapithecus is not part of the human family, there is nothing else which has been discovered to fill the role of being the missing link. Ramapithecus was claimed to be a 14-million-year-old intermediate link between ape-like creatures and humans. The truth, however, is that a baboon living in Ethiopia was discovered to have the same dental structure and similar morphological features as found on Ramapithecus's jaw, which, you'll remember, is the only thing that they found. The end result was that Ramapithecus was dropped from the human line. The Columbia Encyclopedia, 6th edition, 2001 states, a complete jaw discovered in 1976 was clearly non-hominid, and Ramapithecus is now regarded to be an ancestor of the orangutan. The conclusion about Ramapithecus is that artistic license was used in drawing Ramapithecus to look like an upright walker, to look as if he was evolving. But Ramapithecus is the ancestor of the orangutan, not a member of the human family. Perhaps our most interesting study on the facts about the bones will be with Lucy. Lucy is an Australopithecine. In Latin, Australis means of the south. The Greek word pithecus means ape. The claim is made that the Australopithecines are a group of extinct hominids closely related to humans. Most of them are around 4 to 4.5 feet tall. Lucy was discovered in 1974, and approximately 60% of her bones were missing. They claim that she's 3.5 million years old and walked upright. You can see here what they found and what they drew. In this artist's imaginative conception, what do you notice about the Australopithecine which he drew? Do you see the contemplative expression, his human-like hands, the suggestion of his usage of tools, and upright stance? In National Geographic's March 1996 issue, page 109, artist John Gertsch stated, "I wanted to get a human soul into this ape-like face, to indicate something about where he was headed." In other words, artistic license was once again used to make the Australopithecines appear to be evolving. In reality, Lucy had no similarity in appearance to humans. She had long arms identical to chimpanzees. The jaw and upper leg bone are similar to a chimpanzee. Her brain was 65% smaller than the human brain. The Australopithecines had large back muscles for tree dwelling, hands similar to a pygmy chimp, and their feet were long and curved for hanging onto tree limbs. Scientists studied and examined 3 areas to determine if Lucy walked upright. They were, 1, the rib cage, 2nd was the pelvis, and 3rd were the leg and foot bones. Apes' ribs are conical shaped, while human ribs are barrel shaped. PhDs Brad Harb and Bert Thompson stated, in Lucy's case, her ribs are conical, like those found in apes. Moving on to the pelvis, you can see here that there is a huge difference between the chimp and human pelvises. The shape of the pelvis can be used to determine if a creature is capable of bipedal motion, or walking upright. In the American Journal of Physical Anthropology, J. Stern and R. Sussman stated, the fact that the anterior portion of the iliac blade faces laterally in humans, but not in chimpanzees, is obvious. The marked resemblance of Lucy to the chimpanzee is equally obvious. It suggests to us that the mechanism of lateral pelvic balance during bipedalism was closer to that in apes than in humans. In other words, Lucy's pelvis is wrong for bipedal motion, or for walking upright,